Might slip through the cracks. Oh, connect. Oh, connect.
How do you feel about how the game is coming up in terms of like meeting the vision that we have?
I think it's pretty close, honestly. I think the picture he painted in my head for the visuals is hit. I think that's great. The gameplay is super fun. The only thing I think we're missing, and we've got a couple days now to address this, is just information. Giving the player enough information to know that when they pick up this object, it can connect to this, and it's going to have this function. And I know that Lee wants to hit a bit of discovery with this, but there's a weird balance there, and that's always tricky when you write the game, to be able to step back and try to forget everything, so that you know how much you should tutorialize and whatever. Right now I'm working on the energy distribution sliders. This won't take very long to write, but the risk being that there won't be enough time to balance. But we decided that even if we don't balance it, I think it's important to show what the game could be. Most of the time when I'm testing the game, I spawn like the world with nothing in it. Because the more things are in, the more it just kind of complicates the systems and things getting in the way. Yeah, Drew put in this awesome thing. Like, this is the normal environment, but when you get close to your construction, it like dims the world in the background. You see that? Yeah, it's super rad. But he did it just because like it was too noisy like that. Yeah, it's awesome. Oh, this is sweet. Yeah, I haven't actually seen this. So these sliders, they always normalize to 100%. And then if we did this, the head is going to affect the vision radius. So then he'd be able to see a lot farther. And if we went this way, torso is for hit points. So he'd have a lot more health. The arms are strictly damage, which is a little bit tricky because some of the arms, like the mining arm, only attacks the energy cores, which I guess makes sense for it to, mine those faster. But there's a grenade launcher, and so we actually have to pipe that into like the explosion as opposed to the direct shot it does. Yeah, so this is almost done. I just need to do the weapon one. The weapon one's the most complex, but already, anytime you play the game, you end up with a story from it, and I think that's the comparison to Minecraft that we have been trying to hit, or that's at least the goal of any sandbox game, right? It's just give the player enough mechanics that interact with each other to make stories out of that.
My first test of that is I had built a mining robot. I just decided to put all of his energy into his legs, and he flew off, and it was great. He took off the screen, and I chased him, and I ran in the corner, and I noticed he had raced right by a sniper that had been standing there, and it was a really long corridor. I'm like, oh, he's gonna go away, and the sniper had locked onto him, and I was like, he's gonna go away, and the sniper fired and just one shot, and he just boom and blew up in the distance because I had taken all of his hit points away and put it all in speed. He almost made the corner. It was a super close, awesome moment, just seeing those little stories like that happen. It was cool. If you think of like a Venn diagram, you have these big circle of here's everything that could happen, and then like here's everything a developer could make happen, goes into the systems than a player, and so ultimately we want to tune that stuff so more of what the player just happens to do just happens to result in those stories. But that takes a long time to finesse. We haven't had that finesse time, but there's just enough stuff in there that stuff does happen, and it's usually pretty cool. So.
Because the earlier playthroughs had been more about sort of communicating what each part of the game was about, like sort of how it worked from a puzzle design standpoint and all of that. Now a lot of those puzzles are implemented, and so it was much more about like, hey, is this readable? Do you understand the flow? Like, do you think this is intuitive? Are there cool things that we could do with some of the elements that we've got mixed in here? Especially because it's like the game has this sort of weird aspect of like, needing to appeal to people who are just gamers, and then also be like mentally stimulating for like programmer types who are more familiar with the concepts, and so just kind of putting it in front of everybody and like talking through what you do, and it's one thing to do that kind of like on it with a paper design, and it's another thing entirely to actually look at the game and see if it makes sense. And then here's the main splash. I just took Raz's logo and put it over a gradient to start with. If we have time to do a pass on that to make it cooler, that'd be awesome. So so the other thing that's going on in this room is that there's this little sparkly thing here. It's meant to represent a glitch. I'm not sure if that visualization is strong enough, but you can pass through it when it's active. And then when you do,
That's awesome.
there's a totally sweet genie. Yeah, there's his little lamp right there.
The idol's wicked.
Yeah.
He's all, hey, hey.
I love that they all have these cool, like... It's actually, I think that's the game genie pose. Like,
Yeah.
is that because he does this thing where he has like this bolt of electricity that holds
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's pretty rad.
That's how he sleeps too.
I think there were a couple of things today that was sort of like, okay, this is working. Like, I got the puzzle where it's like the fire is way too intense for like you to do it without using the time slowing device, and that one was like it kind of, it caused the reaction that I was hoping for from the people watching it. Right? And I was like, that was I think really interesting. When this item is active, it just slows down the time clock, which is very necessary for this next room.
How do you make it active and not active?
You see the numbers down here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those correspond to number keys. So like
Oh.
3 will look at this note, 4
Oh.
will slow down time.
that's
So
wicked.
it's like I'm still working on the tuning for this. I want it to actually be tougher than it is right now, but it's pretty tough.
You're crazy, man.
The point of it is that like you're supposed to feel like, oh shit, there's no way I can do this. But once you realize that you have this time slowing device,
Oh, yeah.
you can like thread the needle on it. The guards can currently see through walls. I need to fix that. You can connect to these dudes, and you've got their data tables, right? And so you can like come in here and make changes. Basically, you can come up to this guy here, and he's got health. And then just change his health to 0, and then he dies. And now you can see past him. Like, I think just the weirdness of the interaction of like killing a guard by connecting to him and like dropping his health by a few points, and then like letting go and him going, "Bleh," like it's hilarious. It looks really funny in the game, and it's something that I think people aren't used to seeing. So like, it's at least weird in all of the ways that I wanted it to be, and I'm really happy with that. So if people are dorks to the same magnitude that I am, I think they'll get a lot of enjoyment out of that as well. Does that seem like it's short, but does it seem understandable? Like, does it seem like a reasonable progression?
Yeah, yeah. Everything's working good.
Okay,
Yeah. I can't see anything wrong.
sweet, perfect then. Like, I'm spoiled. I don't mean spoiled as in lucky. I mean spoiled as in ruined. I don't know how it feels to play the game from a completely fresh perspective from like someone who's not that familiar with games. I don't know what it's like to sit in front of it if you're a programmer. Like, all I know what it's like is to sit in front of it after you've been hacking on it for a long time, like trying to get it to work. I consider myself like reasonably empathetic as a human being, but when it comes to being empathetic for a player looking at the game for the first time after I've stared at it for this long, it's just impossible.
Yeah.
So you just have to actually put a real human in front of it, and then cringe painfully as your work it just doesn't hold up at all to your expectations for it.
Friday we were playing through ICO, and like I think one of the things we noticed was the pace of our game versus ICO's right now is we've been like moving through things quickly. We like ICO is just such a slower pace. So with all the animations that I'm going over now, I've been kind of slowing them down, like kind of taking my time with them.
I put in more controls for our cameras so we can slow down camera moves. Like, I think that one's a little too quick. And their stuff is just such a slower pace, so it resonates more. Like, so you see what you're doing for longer.
It's going to be a weird happy medium. It's like when I just say that stuff, it kind of sounds like we're going to slow the game down, and it's like, that sounds boring, don't slow it down. But like if it's if it's an environmental ambient exploration game, then that should be kind of a good thing. If it's slowed down, it shouldn't be bad.
And then there's a camera right here, and it can move at a certain speed, and we're going to make it move really slow now.
So yeah, that box right there is the volume that when you walk into it says, now go to this camera, and that camera that you just selected there.
It's really hard. You have to kind of know how to look at this stuff because it's just garbage nonsense if you don't know what you're doing. But we got it. So I slowed it down 10 times.
Cool.
So that should be definitely too slow.
How much did you slow it down last time?
Like, that was half the previous time.
This is gonna be real slow.
Should be, at least. So here we go.
Man, that's
Still too fast.
That didn't seem like it slowed down.
Maybe
Are
it
you sure those values are actually?
They are getting used.
That's like the
Actually,
most frustrating thing about game development is when you're like, I'm gonna edit this, and you like do a
Oh, you know what?
slight tweak, and then you're like, that's close, I'm gonna do a little bit more, and you do a slight tweak, and you're like, that's getting better, and then you do a little bit more, and you move it a little bit, and you're like, it's almost there, and then you do it a little bit more, and you're like, is this really doing anything? And then you like make a major change, and you're like, it was not doing
nothing.
anything the whole time, I'm just an idiot,
Yeah.
and like I thought all my work was awesome.
But you're changing. It's like you're changing a curve's value, but you can't see it. You can't visualize it or anything. You have to just run it and see what happens.
Programmers know what they're doing way more than I do. I'm like a babe in the woods.
I mean, I've played through what's in there, end to end, and it's just going to be about smoothing and refining now to the end, because all the pieces are really still coming in today. Tomorrow's probably going to be all about that. It's just polishing and making sure all the pieces fit together. There's no time for second guessing now. We just have to push on and finish. This blue stuff is the collision mesh. You can see it's a little simpler, a lot simpler than the in-game stuff. So she'll collide with that. So I'll be doing a lot of collision work. Probably once I've done this, I'm going to concentrate on collision work tonight. The thing that's really hard to grasp when you're in this model file is the scale. The character's probably only this big. So when you're talking about a small box or floating a little way off the ledge, that could be a big, when you're in there on the game camera, that could look like a foot or something. I hate bad collision, and I'm kind of a Nazi for that stuff, so I haven't really spent very much time on it, and it's time I need to do that. I'm really trying to plug any holes and trying to make things flow as much as possible from one step to the next. I really try to avoid pushing buttons and pulling levers and pushing blocks around. Levers and buttons always feel a little bit like things are happening magically behind the scenes. I didn't want that to feel like it was the case. I wanted it to feel a little bit more simple and straightforward and just purely physical. Plus, I didn't really want the girl to feel like she has superpowers. She can't really bounce around like Mario or like a rubber ball. She doesn't do wall jumps, and she can't glide. It's a little bit more straightforward. And I was hoping that I would feel a little bit more connected with the world as well, and a bit more physical, like the puzzles. I mean, I've worked on platformers a lot over the years, and I've played a lot of them, and I love the genre. You know, I love all the Mario games. I love all of his moves, and the way that they all mesh together is just fantastic, but it just wasn't what I wanted to do with this, and I didn't feel it was right for this. And really, that's one of the things that made me raise Eco in the first place, is that boy felt the same way. He didn't feel like he could do these superhuman things. He feels weak, but he feels like everything he does is right at the edge of his abilities. And that's what Dave and I talked about a lot in the animation at the beginning of this, is everything she does should feel like she's really trying her hardest. I just went in there and threw a whole bunch of blocks in there and played it and took out the ones I didn't like and kept the ones that I did. And some of the ones that are in there that are not really on the critical path, they're just kind of bonus things right now. Were just things that I'd moved out of the way while I was doing other work. And then when I went back in and I played all the way to the top and looked around, I realized I can probably make that jump, and it looked right at the edge of what was possible, and I tried a few times and finally made it. And wherever that happened, I just kind of left them in. So they'll probably just stay in as bonus path. I like the idea of taking advantage of happy accidents in game development. And it's a thing that not a lot of people, in my experience, like to just go with. It seems to be a lot of the time games have to be designed very rigidly, and the path is the path, and you should never deviate. And where often you'll try things, and because of what I was talking about with the scale being so off, happy accidents will turn up, and things that you thought were going to be great won't be so good. And things that were just an afterthought or leftover debris from an experiment might turn out to be more fun than the original path that you tried to design. And I like the idea of just trying to embrace that, and if it works, keep it. So yeah, I mean, Amnesia Fortnight is about taking those happy accidents, I think, as much as anything else.
So yeah, I've been in programming mode for the last few days. Yeah, what else? A lot of my focus over the weekend was on working on the building tools, because those were actually, I don't know, there were several problems with those, and now they feel kind of decent. They've still got a few glitches.
We've had big discussions about this every day, and it's awesome seeing the result of it. is how do you build something out in the middle of space, and how do you provide the player with intuitive building tools when there's no ground or like natural features? We have asteroids, but other than that, you don't have any of the core things you get in like SimCity, which is a plane, or Dwarf Fortress, which is all burrowed into rock, or Minecraft, which is a 3D terrain that's very apparent. In space, you're building in vacuum, and so there's been a lot of weird conceptual problems we've had to solve with how to make that fun on the building side to the player. And I feel like we actually have done a really good job, especially some of the stuff JP has implemented over the last couple of days is really cool. So you can see here, if you draw your area building tool, the game will intelligently like schedule out building around that perimeter without intersecting in here, and will construct hull on the outer layer only. You will only ever get this gray hull layer. It'll look nicer in the real game. On the furthest perimeter of your base, we have this vaporization tool to essentially unbuild. It won't actually let you unbuild if it would result in your base being exposed to the elements. So you can see with this vaporization, I dragged over here. You can see that these squares are green because it's totally fine to kill those walls because nothing disastrous would happen if I do. But we don't want the player to be accidentally opening up holes out into space that they didn't intend to. I mean, if all goes well, we'll have disasters that will cause that kind of thing to happen, but we kind of are trying to do some of the tedious mental logic processing for the player that we assume they're already gonna know. Like, we don't want the player to misclick and do something that no sane person would ever deliberately do, right? So with the building tools, we're trying to kind of take care of that stuff. And you can see now, they're going in there and they're building it out dynamically themselves, which is really cool. It's really exciting to start. They just had a bad conversation and he left. So that's cool. All this stuff feels way more solid than it did earlier. It felt, when the stuff was first implemented, it felt a lot more like you were just kind of painting in like MS Paint or something, and the game would just let you do anything. You could paint anywhere, you could vaporize anything. I feel like a lot of these rules we've put in have made building a station out in the middle of space actually feel relatively intuitive and logical, which I think is a pretty big win for us, because it started off, a lot of those questions were not answered initially.
Yeah. Every day it's gotten much closer to feeling like a real game, with more of a give and take. Like, each time I go into the game to test stuff, I'm doing more and more actual stuff that players would build. Like, we have not really been making prototypes per se. Well, the whole idea behind a prototype is that you can throw it out. Is that you're not afraid, is that you used it to answer a question or to prove a point. Like, you're doing stuff and you're doing it the quick way rather than the right way a lot of times. And I guess if people see our code, if people who are playing this delve into the code, they'll probably see a lot of like just sloppy things or whatever. And it's a good thing. Like, I mean, throwing work away is a good thing in game development if it puts you in a much better spot, and it didn't cost you an arm and a leg or something. So, you can't be too married to, you especially can't be too married to pieces of code or even particular assets or something. So.
Yeah, I was really inspired by the pitch. Unfortunately my project didn't go through, and I was like, okay, this Levi's, I was like crossing my fingers, and then I knew it was still in 5th place, so I was kind of like hinting at Levi. I was like, is this gonna happen? Is this gonna happen? And I'm really happy when it did. I was just like, hey, I would love to be part of this. So yeah, this is what I started with. Actually, when I saw her, it came to my head. I've been working, at Double Fine for 10 years, so I have this like catalog behind my head of like, oh, I've worked on this, so I know this. So I touched on so many meshes that I was like, RES is a really good basis for this for her. So I started actually off Rez's head. So it kind of started off him, and then usually it's better to start from scratch if you have the confidence that you're gonna get to where you want to go. You can reuse some of the stuff. We tend to mirror some of the information, and some we don't want to mirror because we don't want it to be exactly the same. But this allows us to keep the fidelity fairly high on both sides if you're using just one map for savings. It should have like distinct folds when it comes to her hair or when it comes to cloth. So one of the references that Levi gave me is this thick book here by Landecker, and you can kind of see how he just makes some distinct cuts on folds, so it gives us some really clear shapes. So it's almost simplifying a drapery, so it's not like a realistic hair, instead something very stylized with swirls too. That's something that Levi had a lot in his drawings. At first, you sculpt something and you get it very close to the concept, but you still feel like you find that some things are missing, and then it just kind of comes out of your instinct. One of the things I was wondering too, what makes this character distinct, and she got this, like, it's not like blue eyes, but they're almost gray to white, which is blind almost, this really clear eyes. And you can kind of see a little bit what I was talking about, her eyes, getting that across. The color is like very close to white, and then pushing it to be almost incandescent. So if we were in a condition where it was almost fully black, we would still see the eyes. It would be almost as if it was lit on its own. Because a lot of times in this prototype, we're actually seeing her at this distance. If you're looking at a character, 90% of the time like this, it's like, where can we push it? Like we were talking about doing drapery and simulation and smaller things like this, but that really doesn't carry through only on the cutscene. So we focus our time more on the skirt, on bigger shapes. Same thing with the detailing of some modeling and sculpting the drapery. If we did a lot of minor details, it would just look noisy. We got to the game, it wasn't really showing, and I was like, I want to really push that, because I think that's one of the things that makes her stand out as being a unique character, and going kind of with that Eastern European vibe. Like we had a lot of references from like Czechoslovakia and Russia, and those are the things that don't show up too much. You may see a little bit of like on Dracula or something. So when it describes like the environment that he runs across, so it has a lot of potential.
I did kind of stray away from nailing it down with one culture, and I think that English is not really the most amazing sounding language. So that culminated with me also just loving foreign films. So I kind of was like, why can't this game be a foreign game? It fit the tone better than English did.
Но сказка закончилась, когда шипы закрались. That's the intro. Should I try it again?
Yeah, this one more time.
Призрак из перьев и зубов, меха и мифы. Ни здесь, ни там он движется из одного сна в другой. Но сказка закончилась, когда шипы закрылись.
That's awesome.
Впервые я встретилась с Талией, кажется... Alright, start over.
She totally messed up there, I heard that one. She said the wrong word.
Старше своих лет, это маленькая дочь охотника. Let me see that line for the third part of some other take, because I don't like that either.
So we'll go back
Yeah,
to
right there.
two.
Third part. Следовала она в мой лес по сказке. That's good. Призрак из перьев и зубов. Just that first part. Yeah, right there.
You had to do the fox too.
Yes,
So-
do you guys want to take a look at that?
Sure.
I got this concept and we're really happy with it in the beginning. As I started modeling, we started seeing certain things that didn't quite work out. And Levi kept telling me, he showed me a lot of references from red foxes, but he wanted something that, it felt cuter, that looked like that dog, Shiba, which has got the eyes kind of like close apart, and it still has that triangle head that a fox has, but it came a little bit out. So we went more with the Shiba head here, which is like the eyes are really close apart, and it's got a little bit more of a rounder face. And what we've started finding out is that this fox was very different from his other drawings, where the fox is in the nightmare, it looks more threatening. I can show you now the difference between this fox and the one that's possessed by its nightmare. And this is more of a classic red fox. If you were to put the same bone structure, it would still hold up. So we kind of tried to just change the volume of the fur,
Looks
make
more
it
angular.
more angular, more so it's more threatening, more of a classic fox. And it's almost if you picked up a kind of like what you see a dog, you know, on a rainy day. You just see like all the fur goes down and it looks like uncared and beaten up. So we wanted to kind of carry some of that. I think we got a lot of compliments. I think people will like it. You grab two things that are non-threatening, like pieces of bamboo and stick and a fox, and you put them together, and all of a sudden it becomes this like horrendous creature.
Just seeing how excited people are about just getting on a new project that they are on because they wanted to be on it. The chemistry comes from that. That's like really, really pretty amazing. They've inspired me to just like do my creative best for the past 2 weeks, and I haven't worked this hard in no one knows how long. People probably, yeah, my friends are like, where are you? You know, I don't feel tired yet because just it's the only opportunity to actually do this, and it might go nowhere at all, but at the end of 2 weeks it's going to be pencils down, and whatever's there is the thing that gets remembered by everybody. So how many people are able to do this in their lifetime? So sleep, what sleep? You can sleep in this game. You just hit a certain button. Oh, it's like Christmas Eve right now.
Yeah. Tomorrow you get to open all the presents.
Oh, very cool.
I think you got what you wished for.
Yeah, I think so. But I do need a new iPod, but I don't think I'm gonna get that.